are gearing up for another day of mass demonstrations. These are the latest pictures of Tahrir Square in central Cairo, where the protests are now entering their third week. Well, despite government promises of a 15% pay rise for public employees, protesters are keeping up the pressure on President Mubarak to step down. Opposition groups say the government has conceded little ground in landmark talks aimed at seeking an end to the crisis. Well, the pro-democracy protests have so far lacked any single leader, but one man has emerged as a hero for some. Wael Ghanem is a Google executive whose use of social networking sites inspired thousands to take to the streets. Well, he was freed on Monday after being detained for 12 days. Al Jazeera's Imran Khan has the story.
January 27th, and a man is hauled away by what seemed to be security services. There's no way of confirming these pictures uploaded onto the internet, but they mark a moment Egypt's leaderless revolution found a hero. Wael Ghanem is a marketing manager for the internet search engine Google. His arrest sparked a campaign across the internet. Before his incarceration, he used social media sites to encourage and inform Egypt's pro-democracy protesters. For many, he was a digital icon. But then he simply disappeared into cyberspace. A prolific blogger, his writing just went offline. For 12 days, as Egypt roared with demonstrations, his friends, family and followers mounted an internet campaign with one simple message: "Where's Wael?" Then, on the 7th of February, he was released. Egyptian state TV, realizing his role and the huge internet campaign to get him released, made a big deal.
First of all, I send my condolences to all the people who were killed. It was a peaceful revolution. We didn't want to do any damage. Don't focus your cameras on me. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the youth who are behind this revolution. By God's will, we're going to clean this country of this rubbish.
His words, once on the air, echoed through cyberspace. The news of his release welcomed by many. From Cairo, this man, using the microblogging site Twitter, said, "Welcome back, Wael." Others simply relieved. Andy Carvin wrote, "When you don't see anything but a black scene for 12 days, you keep praying." Even the US State Department spokesman PJ Crowley welcomed the news. Having been released in Egypt today, it's good to see Ghanem back online. Ghanem's experience encapsulates the nature of these protests, led by the people but driven by technology. A technology that seems to have caught the government off guard. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's go live now to our correspondent Andrew Simmons, who's standing by for us live in Cairo. What sort of impact will the release of Ghanem, or what's it expected to have on the protests today, Andrew?
Well, absolute elation on the web and elation in the square as well. This has added a real fuel at a much-needed time for the protesters. They're planning more demonstrations today to keep the momentum up. And of course, all the time, the regime here is trying to squeeze them out, bit by bit. Another night spent under the wheels of tanks and armored personnel carriers for many people, trying to stop the armor from moving forward. And so really this is now a longer game, a much, much longer game, in which the symbol of Liberation Square being occupied to the regime here, it has to squeeze that out of the whole image of Cairo if it's really to move forward. That's the thinking. I'm absolutely sure of it. And they want to see the Tahrir Square. Remember, it's right in the heart of Cairo. They want to see traffic going through the square again. Now the protesters, Ghanem, to them, the head of the marketing head for the whole of the Middle East and North Africa, a very important figure on the web, and not only on the web, now a hero. He says he doesn't want to be portrayed as a hero, and there's one particular quotation I'd like to pass on to you. He said to Dream TV, an Egyptian station, "I want to say to every mother and father who lost a child, I'm sorry, this is not our fault. It's the fault of everyone who was holding on to power greedily and would not let go." Now, as far as the demonstrators in the square are concerned right now, the key figures haven't let go. Hosni Mubarak in particular. Sammy.
Big protest planned for today. Is the move to raise salaries, the pay rises, is that working at all, sort of sapping the turnout?
It's hard to gauge on that one. I would say not necessarily. You've got to remember that we're talking here about 6 million in the public sector who will get this 15% pay rise. They won't get it until April. They were incredibly frustrated by low wages, inflation rising all the time, hard to get by. But remember, 6 million state employees versus a population of 80 million, and really, you know, it doesn't have a massive effect. The finance minister has said this is not a bribe. Now, obviously, the vast number of people who are resisting Hosni Mubarak see it as an attempt at a bribe, and they say it won't work.
And more pictures are emerging, aren't they, Andrew, of abuses during this protest movement, like the laser-guided sniping pictures of pro-democracy protesters. Is any of this leading to a feeling for a need for an independent, perhaps even international investigation?
Sammy, very much so. An investigation right the way across the agenda, an investigation into the pro-Mubarak attacks, an investigation also, it has to be said, for the pro-democracy demonstrators responding. Awful scenes we've seen over the past 48 hours, in particular, of tapes being released to Al Jazeera and showing quite clearly scenes that really do need investigating. And you mentioned these laser-guided shots. We've spoken to some military analysts on this, and the pictures we saw of Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, of single shots going in and hitting, taking out pro-democracy protesters. Actually, they say that these green lasers you see were probably handheld devices, not attached to any rifles, but because of the movement, they think it was handheld marking targets followed by shots going in. Now, we don't have any definite conclusive evidence on this, but there is definitely scope for a major inquiry into this and other atrocities took place. Many deaths. The official death toll for Wednesday night, Thursday morning was put at 13, first of all, by the regime, and then 15 afterwards. Now, those figures we know are absolutely, you speak to anybody about that, they're way underestimated, much higher than that. The United Nations' last figure of 300 dead hasn't been updated to my knowledge, and that's much higher than that now. We're talking hundreds, Sammy. So really now the key is for these demonstrators, they are intent, if they don't have the vast numbers, but they're still intent on showing the world that Liberation Square still belongs to them, and the regime will not move them from it. So this is now turning into a much more drawn-out crisis, no doubt about that.
The world is still watching. Thank you, Andrew Simmons there in Cairo. With protests now stretching into a third week, there are worries in the pro-democracy camp that fatigue may be setting in. Protesters are doing all they can to keep up spirits at the heart of the movement in Tahrir, or Liberation Square, where Shireen Tadros is.
For years, he's been censored and silenced. Now, journalist Sharif Araf says he and his colleagues will tell the truth using their new paper called Liberation Square. And the protesters are hungry for it.
For the government, this is an illegal newspaper, but it gets its authority from the Egyptian people. I'm giving it out to people without money because they have paid with their lives for this freedom of the press.
The square has become a mini utopia in central Cairo. Political opinions aired, gender and sectarian divisions nowhere to be found. People feed and clothe each other here. Medical areas have been set up by doctors joining in with the protesters. The crime and sexual harassment so prevalent in the country seems absent in this square.
So this is essentially the lost and found area, and people have been handing in all sorts of things, from ID cards that they found lying about to mobile phones, sunglasses. Some people have even come and handed in money and coins that they found just lying about. And it's all being protected by the protesters themselves, who have formed this human chain around this area to make sure nobody comes in and tries to take that's been found.
But as the days drag on, tension grows. Organizers worried about infiltrators hostile to their cause are becoming increasingly suspicious of those coming in and those filming in the square.
We are preparing for everything and are afraid of anything that could spoil this revolution. People enter the square, but we don't know if they are with us or not. So we need to tighten the security.
Keeping the momentum going is key to this uprising. There are constant events to entertain and rally people. The more the government appears to be giving in to the demands of the protesters, the more ordinary Egyptians start to question the necessity of the sit-in. For those here, though, any change whilst Hosni Mubarak stays in power is cosmetic. And their message to the president is clear. Shireen Tadros, Al Jazeera, Cairo.